Hi everyone, welcome back to Extra Credit, and today is our 6th episode on ancient Greece. So last time we learned about the rise of the Persian Empire under the mighty ruler Cyrus the Great. We saw that after overthrowing his own rather nasty grandfather Astyages, Cyrus went on to expand the borders of the Persian Empire until it came right up against a little place called Lydia in Asia Minor, right next door to Greece. The Kingdom of Lydia itself was ruled by a guy named Croesus, who was so fabulously stinking rich that in the olden days there used to actually be an expression to be as rich as Croesus, meaning you were insanely wealthy. And of course we still use this expression today, it's just that now we pronounce it rich as Bezos. So the story that our historian Herodotus tells us about Croesus, king of Lydia, is one of the most popular and delightful tales in his entire book. Not only does it perfectly set the stage for the coming war between Greece and Persia, which I promise you is coming in a couple episodes from now, but it also shows us a lot about the Greek worldview and about the ideas and values that shaped their thoughts and actions. So let's get right into it. So as we've seen, Croesus himself was king in the Empire of Lydia, which was in Asia Minor, i.e. modern-day Turkey, although he was right across the sea from the Greeks, and he was friends with many of the Greek city-states. Because of these connections, Herodotus tells us that Croesus was one day favored by a visit from the wisest and most famous Greek of his day and age, a philosopher from the city of Athens named Solon. Wanting, of course, to impress his distinguished visitor, Croesus took Solon on a guided tour of all the treasure chambers in his palaces, hoping to blow Solon's mind by this extravagant display of wealth. Once the tour was over, Croesus turned around and with arms spread wide said to Solon, "So, tell me, after seeing all this, who do you think is the most fortunate man on earth?" To which Solon, without skipping a beat, replied, "Oh, that's an easy one," and proceeded to list a whole bunch of random dead guys that Croesus had never even heard of before. Naturally, Croesus himself was a little bit confused and a little bit offended by this answer, and so by way of explanation, Solon said, "Look, it's simple. The thing these guys all have in common is they're dead, which means nothing bad can happen to them. Whereas you, O king, are still alive, so who even knows what kind of horrible things might be headed your way?" Yeah, Solon wasn't exactly the world's best motivational speaker. But as much as Solon comes across as a bit of a Debbie Downer, all he was doing was expressing a bit of Greek wisdom that was actually very common in that day. Namely, that no living human being can truly be considered fortunate or happy until they reach the end of their life in peace. Or to quote Solon's own famous parting shot to the disgruntled king, as Herodotus tells us, "No matter what, you must always look to the end. Look to how it will turn out, for the heavens will often grant men a glimpse of happiness, only to snatch it away, so that not a trace of it remains." Now just to pause here a bit, despite the fact that both Solon and Croesus are legitimate historical figures, this supposed meeting between them was probably the figment of Herodotus' imagination and his love for a good story. But Herodotus puts it here to teach us this lesson that we shouldn't be too quick to judge things before we've seen how it all turns out. The fact that Croesus himself didn't really get this moral is more than made up for by the fact that as we enter more real historical territory now, he was going to have a chance to learn it again, the hard way. You see, as time went by, Croesus started to hear rumblings of a great new power in the east, the mighty Persian Empire ruled by our old friend from last time, Cyrus the Great. The Persians, of course, were gobbling up more and more land, bringing them ever further westwards, until Croesus himself in Lydia began to get understandably nervous. So to get some input from the gods about what he should do, Croesus sent his messengers to visit that delightfully bizarre Greek institution that we learned about in episode 2, the Oracle of Delphi. Croesus had his messengers ask the oracle about whether or not he should consider the Persians a threat. Would they try to take over his kingdom and kick him off his throne? And in response, the oracle told him that only when a mule becomes the ruler of Persia would Croesus have any reason to fear. Naturally, this sounded fantastic. I mean, what were the odds that an animal was ever going to end up king of the largest empire on earth? I mean, Disney hadn't even been invented yet. In fact, this wonderful prophecy gave Croesus such a boost of confidence that he began to think that instead of waiting for the Persians to come to him, he should go on the offensive and take the fight to them. Thus, his next question for the oracle was, what will happen if I cross the Halys River, which was the border between Lydia and Persia, and attack the Persians myself? To which the oracle gave the absolutely unmistakable reply, if you cross the Halys River to attack Persia, you will destroy a mighty empire. Hey, that's fantastic again! 2 in a row! Right? That's good, right? So now that Croesus knew that the gods themselves were on his side, he lost no time gathering his forces, crossing the Halys River with dreams of even more riches dancing in his head, and eager for the bloodbath that was to come. And the bloodbath did come, just not the one he was hoping for. See, as Herodotus reminds us, in his eagerness to go attack the Persians and add to his own wealth and power, Croesus had forgotten to ask the oracle one very important clarifying question, namely, which empire will I destroy? Because as it turns out, the oracle had meant his. As for the whole "you're totally safe until Persia is ruled by a mule" thing, what he didn't know but you do know is that Cyrus himself was of mixed ancestry, having a Mede for a mother and a Persian for a father. Thus, in a figure of speech, just like mules are a cross between horses and donkeys, Cyrus was himself, in a metaphorical sense, a mule as well. Yeah, those metaphors, they will literally kill you. Reeling from the shock of defeat and with his tail firmly between his legs, Croesus staggered across the Halys River back into his own kingdom and made for his capital city of Sardis, where he took refuge. Cyrus and the Persians, of course, were hot on their tails, and they set up camp around the city of Sardis, waiting to starve the Lydians into submission while trying to find a way into the city. And it was here at the end of his rope, while he was trying to find a way out of this terrible mess he had made for himself, that Croesus was struck by a sudden flash of inspiration. He was, after all, like we said, on friendly terms with some of the Greek cities that lived across the Aegean Sea, and one of those cities in particular was already legendary for its unbeatable army. And so, in a desperate plea, Croesus sent messengers to Sparta, begging for help from the toughest, fiercest, and bravest warriors on earth, who were like, actually, we're kind of busy killing some other Greeks right now, but we'll send a card? And so, with no reinforcements on the way, Croesus's final hope was an ancient prophecy that had said that the city of Sardis would never fall if a lion cub was carried all the way around its walls. Now, this prophecy had been made years ago, and the problem was that one of those sections of city wall was so high up that the king who had originally built Sardis was like, nah, we don't need to carry the lion all the way up there. Who could possibly get into the city from up there? Which is exactly where the Persians got into the city. So maybe you want to try another strategy here, Croesus, because you're like 0 for 3. But to bring our story to its bittersweet conclusion, once the Persians had broken into the city and burned it to the ground, Croesus himself was led away for execution and strapped to a giant bundle of sticks to be set on fire. And as the flames swirled around him and Croesus began to prepare for his last agonizing breaths, he cried out how foolish he had been and how he should have listened to Solon all along. Upon hearing this confession, our good friend Cyrus, the Persian king who was sitting nearby watching, immediately took pity on Croesus and ordered his men to stamp out the flames. But despite their best efforts, the blaze was already too high to be brought under control, and so, Herodotus tells us, it was the gods themselves who intervened to save Croesus, sending a flood of rain to douse the flames at the last minute. And in a fun little epilogue, Croesus then lived happily ever after, following Cyrus around like a little puppy dog and giving him good advice that he had learned from his own poor choices until the end of his days. Making this one of those rare Greek stories where no one actually dies. I mean, Shakespeare would be terribly disappointed. But in the grand scheme of things, what this all meant was that in the year 546 BC, with their conquest of Lydia, the Persians themselves were now right on the doorstep of Greece. And what's more, they were actually ruling over at least some of the Greeks already. That's because these cities here along the coast of Asia Minor were actually full of Greek-speaking people who had strong connections to the mainland across the Aegean Sea. They were called the Ionian Greeks, and the fact that they now found themselves under the thumb of Persia didn't sit well with them. In fact, they were so ticked about it that it made this whole region like a powder keg ready to explode. And on that note, next time we'll meet the Spark. See you then. Hey everybody, thanks again for watching Extra Credit. Hopefully you're enjoying the series on Greece so far and have been following along with the story up to this point. This week's pop quiz is, what was the name of the Greek philosopher who maybe visited Croesus? Remember to enter the contest in room 215 for your chance to win a prize. As always, work hard, read books, play outside, and we'll see you next time.